The nearest drag strip to my house is like a 3.5-hour drive away and is kind of a pain in the butt to get there because usually I'll load the truck up on the trailer, drive up there, we'll spend the night, go to the drag strip, and then come home the next day. Just because a 3.5-hour drive is like borderline, it's doable in one day, but by the time you drive up there, pack all your stuff, spend a couple hours at the drag strip, and then turn around, it makes for a really long day. And usually the drag races happen at night. So the next best thing is something that I just bought, and I'm gonna put it to the test. It's called a Draggy GPS. It's basically a little piece of hardware that works with your smartphone. It's supposed to be a really, really accurate accelerometer. It has a cool little video feature in there or whatever. And they say it's accurate to within like 1/100 of a second when you compare it to an actual timing system at a drag strip. So today we'll put that to the test, and we're actually going to measure every vehicle that we have on the channel, starting with the 4.8 powered Stepside Silverado, and then moving all the way through the lineup to the 8.1 powered turbocharged big block 2-wheel drive Silverado 1500 that is known as the UglyTruck. So like I said, we're going to start with the Stepside truck, but before we actually get it out of the shop, I do need to do a few adjustments to the alignment because we just lowered the suspension and the wheels are like all out of whack. So I didn't want to drive it just yet. The rear was lowered about 3 inches by taking out the lift block and putting a drop shackle on. The front was lowered by installing a torsion bar key, so now the front end is quite a bit lower, about 2.5 inches on average. And so I need to correct the alignment. The camber is way, way negative. The caster, I don't really have a great way to measure that, but as long as I move both sides of the control arm evenly to correct the camber, the caster hopefully should be at least within the ballpark to where it kind of was before, and then we'll finally set the toe. I don't want to go to an alignment shop just because I'm going to make a bunch more changes to the suspension. It's going to get a lot lower. I'll put more parts on and probably rebuild most of the front suspension. So any alignment work that I have done is just going to be money thrown away. So I have a couple of quick and easy tools that I kind of put together. I had an old alignment system that's supposed to be for like a semi-truck system, but I cut it down and I modified it and I stuck on my little digital angle finder here. So you got these 4 little red tabs, those kind of go on the lip of the wheel. And basically we're at like negative 1.8 degrees, which is, I mean, that's exaggerated, but the top of the tire is way tipped in and the bottom is out. So what I have done here, jacked it up, took the wheel off just so I have plenty of access. I pulled out the little original retainers that the factory puts in there. So this alignment hasn't been touched basically since the truck was new. Made a little Sharpie mark on the alignment cam there and matching one on the little stud that kind of holds everything into place. And basically I'm going to adjust both the back side and the front side of the control arm evenly to correct the camber, And in theory, that won't mess too bad with the caster if I do them both at the same exact way. And then of course, after that, I'll just double check the toe, which right now is towed out quite a bit, but as soon as I move the top of the ball joint out, it should actually fix a little bit of the toe. So anyway, that's where we'll start. We'll get the alignment done, and then we'll go drag racing, see how it works. All right, so we made a handful of really simple changes. Let me just show you real quick what we did and why we did it. The bulk of the alignment corrections for the camber, not caster, I keep trying to mix those two up, was made just by moving both alignment cams out from there to there. So I did the same amount on both sides. that moved the upper ball joint out, which should correct the negative camber condition. Now, if I move this one out and that one back in, it would move the ball joint back, which would add additional caster. And conversely, if you did the other way, you would add less caster. But anyway, we haven't messed with that. We went squarely out. Should only affect the camber reading. I did then trim the top off the bolt right there for the sway bar end link, just because it did get very close to the little brake hose here at ride height, so I didn't want that rubbing through. Chopped it off, and then finally we just adjusted the bump stop by cutting off maybe like 3/8 of an inch. That way we have just a tiny air gap in there when the truck is at ride height. So now what we got to do is put the wheel back on, let the truck down on the ground. You got to drive it back and forth just a couple of feet to kind of let the suspension settle in. Then we can take another camber reading, and hopefully we're in the ballpark. And then finally we'll just adjust the toe, and then we'll hit the road. So it took a couple of tries on the passenger side to get the camber exactly where I wanted it. It started at like -2 degrees. That one was like way out of whack. And then we wound up with a -0.3 on the passenger side, -0.2 on the driver's side, which is like really super close. I think the spec is actually a little bit on the positive side of things, but the range overlaps 0. So it goes like, say, from -0.5 to +0.5 or something like that. But anyway, I'm happy with where it's at. And the other thing that I did check was the toe in, which came in at 3/16 of an inch towed in. I think that might be a little bit much toe. I'm not positive. I'll have to look up the spec. But before I make any adjustments, I just wanted to get it out and drive it down a very straight road and see if the steering wheel is still centered. And if it is, fine, I'll move the toe evenly on both tie rods. Or if it's, say, pulling one way or the other, then I'll just know I have to adjust more on one tie rod than the other to correct the steering wheel being off-centered. But anyhow, we're in the ballpark. We're really, really close on the alignment. So now it's on to the Draggy GPS testing. And like I said, we'll do a couple trucks here just to see which is faster, which is slower. I've actually never seen, before I bought this Draggy, how they work or what they are. It's kind of cool. The Draggy device itself is this guy right here. It's just a little, I mean, this thing is tiny. It's like smaller than your phone. It's got a little magnet in there, and it just uses some kind of super accurate GPS technology to tell how fast you're going, and then it Bluetooths over to your smartphone. So I have this thing mounted. I picked this up on Amazon for a couple dollars. This is just like a suction cup holder for like a Easy Pass type thing, but you can stick the little Draggy metallic thing on there, so it basically magnets right on there. You gotta have a good view of the satellites, obviously. And then I picked up this, which is just like a little suction cup smartphone holder. So I'll record the video with the iPhone, and then the Draggy will send all the information via Bluetooth to the smartphone right there. So anyway, that's how the Draggy device works. Like I said, they claim it's accurate to within a couple of hundredths of a second compared to a timing system on a drag strip. So as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty darn accurate. So let's go do some testing on a closed course, of course. All right, first thing I want to say is I hope you guys can actually hear what I'm saying, because I ran over my GoPro in the shop the other day and it crushed my little mic adapter and the cord for my external mic. So I'm just using onboard audio for the GoPro. So I hope you guys can hear what I'm about to say. First thing you'll notice, just driving down this road, is fairly straight. My steering wheel is like off just by a tiny fraction of an inch, so I will make just a slight correction to it, but For aligning with tape measures and an angle finder and a couple of pieces of metal, I'd say that we're off to a really good start. So anyway, we're almost out at the spot, and I have the little app and the Draggy thing all synced up. They're doing what they're supposed to do. So as soon as we get out there, we'll do a quick test and see how fast we are. Next up, 2020 AT4 HD. This one has the 6.6 L5P Duramax under the hood. I think it's rated at like 445 horsepower, 910 pounds of torque from the factory. It's a heavy truck. These are like, they're like 8,500 pounds. But that being said, it has a lot of power and a lot of torque compared to the Stepside. So I think this one will be a little bit quicker. Let's find out. So the AT4 definitely feels a little bit quicker than the Stepside, even though it probably weighs just about an honest twice as much, but it's got a lot more power too. So yeah, it definitely feels a little bit quicker, although I feel like there's a lot of potential left on the table with some good tuning. Now, I haven't done anything to the truck yet. It is bone stock. I mean, we're talking stock intake, stock everything. So yeah, with some good emissions on tuning, I feel like we can make this thing a whole lot quicker, but that's a project for another day, because I got like 2 or 3 other trucks in line that are going to get performance upgrades before this one. But someday I definitely want to do some upgrades to the engine and the transmission. This is the 10-speed, just to, you know, give it a lot more horsepower, another 150 horses and another 300 pounds of torque. I think would definitely wake it up. So on to the next one. So now we're in the big blue bus. This is my 99 Chevy Suburban. It's got a big block under the hood. It's a 7.4 liter Vortec. This one I've done a few odds and ends to. It's for the most part stock. I did do an 0411 ECM swap, which is basically putting an LS1 computer into an old distributor controlled fuel injected big block. I think on paper these are like 260 horsepower maybe and 390 pounds of torque. I'll put the right numbers up on the screen. But I'm actually wondering how quick this is going to be compared to the Stepside, because I think it's going to be very close. So this will be a pretty cool comparison. Now it probably is heavier, although it does have more torque, and it's got 410 gears in it, where the Stepside has 373s. Although that is somewhat offset by the first gear of like 248 to 1 in the 4L80 that this has, and the 309, I think, first gear that the 4L60 in the Stepside has. So anyway, yeah, I'm just really curious to see what the two are going to do against each other, because I feel like they ought to be fairly close. So let's find out. Here goes nothing. So overall, not bad for a big heavy SUV. I mean, there's definitely room for improvement, and I'm not really sure where I want to take this project right at the moment. I've been back and forth. My original plan was to do an Avalanche conversion. I saw how one looked, and then I decided, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And then originally I wanted to do, you know, cam headers and all that good stuff on the big block, and I think I still may. Although I'll admit this project is probably going to take a backseat to the Stepside build, because I have some really cool stuff already on the way for that one. But whatever I do to this, maybe a diesel swap, I don't know, will definitely make it go a little bit quicker, because yeah, it's heavy and it's certainly not the quickest thing in the world, but it is fun and it's a classic looking truck, that's for sure. Alright, so this one is going to be kind of fun, because this is the UglyTruck. It's my 2000 Silverado with the turbo 8.1 in it. And the whole reason why I'm doing this benchmark data now is because I actually just got in yesterday, in fact, a brand new torque converter for this thing, so, there's nothing there. It takes 4 seconds for this thing to spool up, and I showed you guys that with the data log when we were at the track last time. So anyway, I just want to get some good benchmark data to compare against my drag strip times, and then once we put the bigger converter in, then we'll be able to do this again and kind of make some more comparisons. So it makes on 7 pounds of boost, 490 horse, and 620 pounds of torque at the tire. Right now I'm running like, I think 10 or 11 pounds. I've turned it down from its max of, I think I had 13 maximum. I'm just about 10 right now, so let's see what it'll do on 10 pounds of boost. So thankfully the Stepside is actually not the slowest vehicle on the channel, because that would be very embarrassing if a big 22-year-old heavy Suburban with a big block was faster than a lightweight Stepside. Even though it does have the baby 4.8 in it, it is now the 3rd quickest vehicle on the channel. Now, as far as the alignment goes, I think everything is spot on. I'm actually not going to make any further changes to it. It drives straight down the road. It just depends on if it's crowned a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. Sometimes you have the wheel to the left, sometimes the wheel is to the right. So I am going to call that a win. There's no additional vibrations or shimmies or anything weird going on like that. A lot of you guys have asked, how does the truck ride now that we have lowered the suspension? And honestly, I don't think it rides any different than it did before. We still have old, high mileage, worn out shocks. None of the shocks are overextended or overcompressed. They're still well within their range. And by trimming the bump stops, both front and rear, we still have the same amount of travel as we did before. So right now, with the 2.3 drop, it rides exactly the same as it did before. So how did the rest of the numbers break down though for the fleet? Obviously, the UglyTruck is the fastest. And I only did an 1/8 mile run on all of the vehicles just because there's no great long, straight, closed courses around here that we can run to a full 1/4 mile on. So I just did an 1/8 mile and I did the 0 to 60 times for everything. And here's how they broke down. 4th place, the Suburban, 11.4 to 60 and 11.69 at 60 miles an hour in the 8th. Right behind that's the Stepside, 1098 to 60, which is kind of slow, 11.52 at 62 miles an hour in the 8th. The AT4, that was actually quite a bit quicker than I kind of thought. So 8.8 seconds to 60, 1088 at 68 in the 8th mile. And then of course we have UglyTruck, 6 seconds to 60, and that's really where this truck is hurting because of how slow it is with that converter, but the converter will help that out. And then 9 1/4 at 85 miles an hour in the 8th, which is actually pretty darn close to my actually slowest time at the track, 9:01 at 86.9 miles per hour. Now, there will be some differences between those two times at the drag strip versus on the street because I had a little more traction at the drag strip, where on the street it did spin a little bit. And I'm running my lowest boost setting, and of course there's slightly different altitudes, slightly different temperatures. So all of those things will account for, oh, and my launch was just like, I didn't even launch it at all on the street. I just kind of flat-footed it. So as far as I'm concerned, that little Draggy box is pretty cool. And as far as I'm concerned, it's accurate enough to make good comparisons for all the parts that we're about to install. Like the converter, which I'm pretty sure we're gonna see a really drastic improvement in the 0 to 60 time, and especially the 8th mile, but really the first half of the track. If not, it's gonna definitely give me traction problems because once we get that turbo loaded up a little bit sooner, it's gonna make a world of difference. So next time, that's where we're going to start. We're going to pull the trans out of the UglyTruck, pull the 4L80. We're going to put the looser converter in. We're going to put a shift kit in. I have a Transgo kit that's been sitting on the shelf since last summer. I'm going to put a bigger trans cooler in to keep the temps down, and then finally install a different cluster with a trans temp gauge in it so I can keep an eye on the transmission. Let's see, what else? The UglyTruck, or no, not UglyTruck, the Stepside, I got to come up with a name for it. We are going to make this one quite a bit quicker, and I'm going to start by doing some exhaust. On the way, we have long tube headers, an X-pipe, and then a bunch of material so I can build the rest of the exhaust. And we're going to kind of try to take a budget approach, but also do something a little bit custom because I hate having exhausts that are all the same. So you have that to look forward to. Next time we're doing the converter on the UglyTruck. So you guys know what to do. Click that like button, smash the subscribe button, drop a comment down below, and come back in a couple of days because we'll get more great content headed at you. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in a few.